What's up, everybody? This is Fray bringing you an audio commentary, copyright 2006 WCReplays.com. Go ahead and get this replay paused at the 15-second mark. I'm actually going to talk about the build order a little bit. And today's game is between Sweet and Lynn, Undead versus Orc. The reason that I picked this game, for one thing, most people consider Orc to be Undead's hardest matchup, so I feel like there can never be too many audios covering the subject. And I also picked a Sweet game, like I think every single one of my Undead vs. Orc games has featured Sweet in it. I think he is really the best pro Undead in terms of his creativity and his effectiveness against the Orc race. Yeah, let's go ahead and get this thing unpaused, and I will continue to talk from there. Watch this from one of the observer's point of views, because I really like the creeping style that Lynn uses with the Orc. I think that any Orc guys that are watching this, despite my known Undead bias, might get something out of this. It may be an old trick, I'm not really sure. I actually don't like playing Gnoll Wood, so I thumbs it down, so my apologies for my lack of expertise in that regard. But I think I can still give you guys a good, informative, and accurate audio. Let's get this thing unpaused. 15-second mark, observer point of view, so you can see everything in 3, 2, 1, unpause. Alright, the general build order for any kind of Fiend build, which this is Crypt Lord and Fiends, is going to be for you to get your Crypt and then your Graveyard pretty much immediately, one after the other. You only build one Acolyte when you do that, and then you queue up the second one right after you build the Graveyard, although there are variants on that. In fact, I'm not even sure if Sweet did it that way. It doesn't really matter. Your next building can either be your Ziggurat or your Altar. The Altar gets your hero going a little faster, the Ziggurat gets your first Fiend out faster. I prefer Altar first, Sweet's using Ziggurat first in this case. Frankly, it doesn't really matter. Whichever one seems to feel best for you, just do it and don't worry too much about that kind of minor stuff. There are 3 ghoul variants of this and 2 ghoul variants of this. You want to use like a 3 ghoul and then start building your Fiends. Those are good, and you need to go Ziggurat first for that, by the way. Those are good if you are trying to fast expand, or for some reason you really want to have a lot of lumber. Normally the 2 ghoul is better because it gets your hero and your Fiends out and creeping as quickly as possible. So that is pretty much the Fiend builds in a nutshell. There's really not that much to it. Base build, once again, Sweet is one of the best players to watch, I think, for setting up an Undead base build. He manages to get his buildings in around his gold mine really tight. What I like to do, and what Sweet also seems to do most of the time, is either like your Crypt or your Altar. You want to build the one of those two, like right smack up next to your gold mine. This allows you to block off the area around your gold mine pretty quickly. You want to make it so that there is a very, very narrow path around the mine, so that whenever Acolytes are running from your enemy units, like if they're trying to circle the gold mine and get away from an attack, the enemy units are going to have to corridor through to try and chase after it. God forbid the front one of them has been slowed by a Nerubian tower, or it's going to ruin his whole day. Alright, let's look at the middle of the map. Check out what Lynn is doing in terms of his creeping technique here. I'm not sure. I mean, Gnoll Wood is an old map, so I doubt this is anything new. But what he did was he teased the Red Drake out with his Farseer, and once it got out of the range of the fountain, he ran his Farseer back into the range of the fountain. So you have a Farseer that is getting healed, hitting a Red Drake that is not, which will allow him to kill a camp with a flying level 6 creep right at the beginning of the game. And that really is pretty goddamn slick. So this little creeping trick is going to leave Lynn with a pretty substantial experience advantage over Sweet. One of the unfortunate things about the Fiend builds is that it does take you a good while before you can get out and start creeping. As you see, Lynn's just about done with his first camp, and Sweet is starting up, just doing the little weenie creeps near his base. With the Crypt Lord is a hero that you want to get to level 3 very fast. There are very few exceptions to that rule. Almost all heroes, 3 is a very important level for them to reach, and after that it's not as big of a deal. So what he's going to try and get is the 2 little green camps nearest his base, one of the shops and one of the expansions, and that will get his Crypt Lord to level 3. That is his plan, at least. The deal is you want to get, for the Crypt Lord, is you want to get the level 2 beetles, because they are a hell of a lot better. Level 1 beetles really suck. They die incredibly fast, and they don't dish out that much damage. Level 2 beetles also get Burrow, which is immensely helpful. Sweet has left one of his fiends back at his base, which I don't know if he did this on purpose, but it ends up being very useful on defense. He also got a staff of teleportation on his Crypt Lord, which is going to allow him to pop back into his base, pop out a rod of necromancy, and also potentially summon some beetles if he needs them. He actually had to just do that because whenever your base is getting harassed by an orc and you are halfway through teching, you really have to get back as quickly as possible and do something about it, because if he ends up killing like 2 or 3 of your acolytes, you're going to be way, way behind in gold, and you absolutely can't afford to do that against orc. He staffed out and unfortunately left the items behind. Basically, you can't always expect things to go perfect, especially when you're using the Crypt Lord. He's kind of a big, clunky hero, and it puts Undead in an unusual position where you're actually the one that is playing anti-harassment. The Orc is really going to be playing a little bit more aggressive in the early part of the game because you have so much creeping power with your Crypt Lord. You're going to be the one that is just trying to creep and get your opponent to leave you alone. So you want to micro very defensively. Anytime you see your fiends getting into trouble, they have a few grunts on top of them, you absolutely have to run them back to your base. Watch out for surrounds. Lynn just managed to get a pretty nice one on Sweet. Anytime you get surrounded by an orc player, look for the wolves first. They die very quickly. And once you get one of them out of the way, that often opens up enough room for your hero to escape the surround, as Sweet managed to just get out of there. Sweet is also doing my favorite little trick with the undeads. I actually hadn't really seen any pros do this before, and I'm glad to see that I wasn't just getting lucky with it. Not that he learned it from me or anything. I guarantee you came up with it quite on his own, but you train beetles and impale, and don't bother with carapace. Carapace is very good, and without it, the Crypt Lord is actually pretty vulnerable to focus fire. However, you really need the impale. For one thing, if he switches to Spirit Walkers and starts dispelling your beetles, you're going to have to turn the beetles off. And instead of having to buy a Tome of Retraining, which they are expensive, and you also might not be able to get to a shop conveniently, you're a lot better off being able to just turn beetles off and switch to using the Impale that you've already trained up. He's going to start teching. I don't know why, to be honest, he has started his Tier 3 tech this early on. It kind of doesn't make sense. One of the there is one good reason to do this. Whenever you're going for the Crypt Lord, you do kind of have to expect that your opponent is going to fork over to using Spirit Walkers, and he's going to try and go for Dispel. One of the ways that you can mitigate this is by getting Destroyers as quickly as possible, because they... Obviously, if your opponent went Spirit Walkers and you go Destroyers, the Destroyers are going to really do a number on the Spirit Walkers. Let's watch this battle here. Sweet let all of his fiends get stomped right there. That's really pretty hard not to do. However, he actually manages to get off, I think, at least at the very beginning, only losing one of them, because he uses Impale. That is one of the very important uses of Impale, and another one of the reasons why you want to train it instead of Spike Carapace is because whenever your fiends get into trouble, like they've been stomped and they've got grunts all freaking over them, you can blow an Impale, and you can, and generally when you do that, you will be able to get your fiends out of danger with fairly minimal losses. Watch out for scrolls of speed, of course, because they can get right back on top of you. A lot of the times, if I see an opponent blow a scroll of speed, I expect that I'm going to have to throw out an Impale pretty soon afterwards. You want to be very, very stingy with your Impales. Don't throw them out like just at the beginning of the battle to try and get a nice little position advantage on your opponent or something like that. Save that mana. The Crypt Lord obviously does not have a large mana pool to work with, so you basically want to save it for an emergency situation. Let's actually change it to Sweet's point of view, because with the Fog of War on, and we're going to look at the scouting he's doing. He sends a couple of beetles into his opponent's base to try and cancel buildings. One of the things you can do with beetles that ends up being pretty nice is to burrow them. If you send one out scouting and it gets into trouble, you just burrow it. That means you still get the vision until your opponent takes the trouble to go buy excuse me. Man, I can't remember the name of the item. The Dust of Appearance. Thank you, brain. It's going to force your opponent to go grab a Dust of Appearance or you know, use something to get him a little bit of scouting, or a little bit of true vision, I believe it's called, that allows you to see burrowed units. And that's a pain in the butt for him. So it basically, especially at tier 2 against an orc opponent, anything that slows him down is going to be good for you. Sweet is playing very defensively at this point. It's really a pretty good idea. We can actually go back to Remind's point of view, or just one of the observers, so you can watch what everybody's doing. If he tried to go out and creep, it would be very, very, very easy for the orc player to take advantage of that, because, as you can see, actually, the orc player is creeping pretty close to Sweet's base. And it's very easy for him to just start pushing into your base with those raiders doing all their siege damage, force you to blow a town portal. So for that reason, he's just been kind of running his Crypt Lord around, trying to get some scouting going on. He found out that the orc player expanded, but he's going to wait on it for now. One of the things that will help you out against an orc player is when you see them building an expansion, you can take some comfort in the fact that orc expansions take a very, very long time to build. So it's only just now, even though Sweet started even though Lynn started this kind of in the beginning of tier 2, I think, that it's going to be a while before that expansion starts playing off. Sweet took a nice little compromise between the danger of creeping and the passiveness of sitting in your base. He actually went and crept the big red creeps that were right around the corner from his base. That's a little bit safer because it lets him get right back into his base when Lynn tries to push him, which is happening right now. Sweet's also going for his, as far as I know, he came up with it. Nice town portal there. He had 3 webbed fiends, and those were probably all going to die. It seems like a shame to town portal in your own base, but if you do the math, if you can save 2 fiends with the town portal, you should do it. It's really quite simple. That 2 fiends is going to cost you over 400 gold plus some lumber, whereas the town portal was only 350. So play very, very carefully with your fiends when you go for the Crypt Lord first. You're not going to have coil at all at the beginning of the game, and you're not going to have a very high level coil later on. Anyway, Sweet is going for his Banshee Fiend build. The last time that he scouted Lynn's base, he saw 2 bestiaries, so he knew he wasn't going to be dealing with Spirit Walkers anytime all that soon. although I believe Lynn is going for them right now. So